Selamat sore, good afternoon. Welcome to Kotekatalk, komunitas traveler Kompasiana. And today we have a very special guest coming from the Down Under, Australia. We have Professor Chris. Selamat sore, Professor Chris.
Selamat sore, Pak.
Terima kasih for joining our program today. And we also want to greet the students from all over Indonesia, mostly from Semarang. And I think also we have our Koteka team, Mbak Gana, Mas Dave, Mas Danang, and also Mbak Nani. So thank you very much for spending 1.5 hours with us. I hope that this talk will give you a new insight about the documentary, movie, and probably Australia, because Pak Chris, Dr. Chris, is from Australia. Before we start, let me read the short bio of Professor Chris. Professor Christoper Basil is a filmmaker, ethnomusicologist, and composer. He directed the documentary film Kartika, Nine Ways of Seeing in 2018, a portrait of charismatic and outspoken Japanese modern artist, Ibu Kartika Affandi. He also directed an introduction to Japanese way of life, death, and perfection in 2015 about a spiritual teacher in Java and worked as a cameraman on the Java Spirit Religious Diversity in Indonesia 2011. Once again, thank you very much, Professor Chris, for spending your time with us. So it is almost midnight in Australia.
Yes.
What time is it now in Australia?
It's 8 o'clock in the evening on a
Or 8
Saturday
o'clock
night.
in the evening. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just read the article from the newspaper this morning that Melbourne, is open now. Is it correct?
Yes, it is open. If in reference to the COVID-19 pandemic, we had a lot of lockdown. We had periods where we were asked to not go more than 5 kilometers from our home, try to avoid going into public places, wear the mask all the time, and so on. And even the state lines were closed in Australia so that you could not travel from Melbourne to Sydney, for example, or to Adelaide or Perth and so on. So we've had some periods of very intense isolation and lockdown. But at the moment, everything is open and seems to be much nicer.
Oke, thank you very much. So, teman-teman semua, Profesor Chris ini adalah ahli film dan banyak sekali Profesor Chris ini mendedikasikan hidupnya tidak hanya di Australia tapi di Indonesia, dan beliau adalah salah satu yang bekerja dalam sebuah film untuk Ibu Kartika. Dan Ibu Kartika waktu itu pernah kita undang juga ya di Zoom beberapa bulan yang lalu. Jadi beliau adalah salah satu maestro pelukis ya di Indonesia. So, dan saat ini Melbourne, teman-teman semua, di Melbourne ini jam 8 malam, dan Pak Chris berada di rumah beliau. Dan hari ini sebenarnya Melbourne sudah dibuka untuk international, tapi dalam artian bagi penduduk Melbourne, mereka belum bisa pergi ke luar kota yang sangat jauh, jadi hanya 5 kilometer dalam jangkauan. Jadi belum bisa ke Sydney dan belum bisa ke mana-mana. Kalaupun bisa, pasti tentunya ada protokol kesehatan. Pak Chris, just want to ask you, when did you start interested in Indonesia, Pak Chris?
Maaf kalau saya pakai bahasa Inggris saja ya, Pak.
Baik, silakan Pak.
Bisa jelas untuk semua kalau saya pakai bahasa Inggris, maaf. I first became interested in Indonesia when I was just starting as a university student. And I suppose the very first
I'm
thing...
sorry, Pak Chris,
Yes. Can you hear me okay? I first became interested in Indonesia when I was a university student. And I suppose the very first thing that really got me very curious to learn more about Indonesia was hearing recording of, as I was saying, what first made me very interested to learn more about Indonesia when I was about 18, 19 years old, I heard some lovely recordings of gamelan music from Java and from Bali. And I was very impressed and very fascinated by that. And I became very interested to learn more about Indonesia because of that experience.
Thank you, Pak Kris. So, Pak Kris ini tertarik dengan Indonesia ketika beliau masih menjadi murid. Dan ketika itu Pak Kris tuh mendengarkan gamelan baik itu gamelan Bali maupun gamelan Jawa. Itu adalah awal mula Pak Kris tertarik dengan Indonesia. Pak Kris, you have been, like working in Indonesia for quite some time. And do you have any particular things that you like about Indonesia, Pak Kris?
Well, it's difficult to say only one thing because there are many, many things that are quite wonderful about Indonesia, as you know very well. It's easy to talk about the beautiful music and the beautiful arts and cultural forms of expression and cultural forms of performance. It's very easy to admire the wonderful landscape and I'm always fascinated to explore different parts of Indonesia and appreciate the great diversity of landscape and beautiful locations. Of course, it is a very diverse country culturally and linguistically. I could go on and on. I like Indonesian food very, very much, which is fortunate because I guess I also always liked spicy food and unusual food, so I found Indonesian food was very good for me.
Thank you,
I could say many things because Indonesia is a very wonderful place to me in the world, and I think of it as my home as well as my own country. I always feel at home and welcome and peaceful when I'm in Indonesia.
Wow, terima kasih Pak Kris. Jadi kesan Pak Kris terhadap Indonesia ini luar biasa. Pak Kris menganggap bahwa Indonesia ini menjadi rumah keduanya dan banyak hal yang disenangi oleh Pak Kris. Banyak sekali, tapi Pak Kris tadi sempat menyebutkan beberapa hal yang beliau senangi selain budayanya, seni, musik, dan Pak Kris juga suka makanan Indonesia yang pedas seperti itu. Jadi budaya itu sebenarnya tidak bisa kita anggap enteng karena pada dasarnya budaya itulah yang banyak membuat orang itu tertarik dengan Indonesia. Pak Kris, can you tell us a little bit when was your first time visiting Indonesia, and then you have been traveling all over places in Indonesia. Can you mention your favorite place in Indonesia?
My first time traveling in Indonesia was approximately, I guess it was 33 years ago now. And the first place I visited, like so many foreigners who come to Indonesia, the first place I visited was Bali. And I spent time in Bali. I think at the time it was a 1 month visa. And when I got to the end of the month, I extended it and stayed a second month because I liked it so much. And I was fortunate to begin studying in Ubud with Bapa, I want to say Swastika. I believe it was Chakorda Swastika at the time. And I began studying playing gong kebyar music, which was a really wonderful experience to me as a musician and as a composer. I think the whole world admires the remarkable creative music styles that come from Indonesia. And certainly one of the most well-known styles outside of Indonesia has to be gong kebyar from Bali. The music is very complex and very, very beautiful, of course, and arranged according to very sophisticated principles. So I felt very, very fortunate to be able to study that music in the Balinese style, which did not involve using any books or pieces of paper, or it was a matter of sitting in the public place and learning the parts by imitation and by through the great patience of my teacher.
Thank you.
So that was my first visit to Indonesia, and I was very happy to have finally, after having read a lot of books about Indonesia and studied it for a number of years, I was happy that I was finally able to to visit.
Thank you very much, Pak Kris. So, Pak Kris datang ke Indonesia pertama kali itu beliau pergi ke Bali. Dan di Bali beliau itu punya seorang guru namanya Bapak Swastika. Beliau berdomisili di Ubud. Nah, apa yang beliau lakukan selama di Ubud? Beliau itu belajar musik gamelan Bali, gong gebiar. Frankly speaking, Pak Kris, I have to learn about this one. What is the gong gebiar later on? Probably later we will discuss with all the audience about the kind of instruments that actually, I'm sure not many Indonesian, especially youth at the moment, they're aware with the gamelan. You can check, you can give the question to them, and then those who can answer, they will give a gift from us. Kemudian beliau itu tinggal selama 1 bulan di Ubud. Nah, beliau itu tidak hanya tinggal, tapi juga belajar kemana saja. Jadi practical experience, jadi benar-benar praktek, belajar langsung gamelan di banyak tempat. Nah, itu yang beliau sangat rasakan berbeda karena beliau dapat pengalaman langsung. Dan menurut beliau, gong atau gebiar Bali itu sesuatu instrumen yang luar biasa, tidak hanya indah suaranya, tapi juga kompleks untuk belajarnya. Dan itu yang beliau rasakan ketika belajar instrumen tersebut. Sesudah itu, beliau banyak membaca buku, referensi yang lain tentang hal lain, itu khususnya tentang Indonesia, dan beliau tertarik untuk lebih mengenal Indonesia. Pak Kris, you mentioned earlier that you learn gamelans, but gamelan is I think your first impression with Indonesia, the music. Pak Kris, can you tell us why or how do you connect with the Ibu Kartika, Pak Kris? So, and then you make the documentary or the movie about that one.
I was lucky to meet with Ibu Kartika only for the first time. I want to say it was 11 years ago. I was in Central Java working as a filmmaker on a documentary film sponsored by the anthropology department at the University of Melbourne. It was a documentary about the varieties of religious expression and religious experience in Java specifically. And I was in Yogyakarta, and an old friend of mine from Melbourne, who I've known for about 30 years, I happened to contacted me and said that he was also in Jogja, and he is an old friend of Ibu Kartika, who has known her since the 1960s, if I'm not mistaken, so for quite a long time. And he said, "You really must come by. I've been telling Ibu Kartika about you, and she would like to invite you to come and have supper." So that was a very generous and friendly invitation. And of course, I couldn't refuse it. So I made my way to Ibu Kartika's place, which is outside of Jogja. And we met and had supper in the Pendopo with her and her family. And she and I found that we had a lot to talk about, a lot to discuss. And before I knew it, it was very late at night and everyone was going to bed. And she and I were still talking and talking away because she's a wonderfully friendly and interesting person to talk with. And we became friendly with one another. And finally, after seeing her several times over the next couple of years, after I knew her for about 5 or 6 years, I suppose, I suggested that it might be an interesting idea to make a little film about her and about her artwork and her vision of art and her vision of the world that she conveys through her artwork.
Terima kasih Pak Kris. Jadi saya bertanya kapan sih Pak Kris ini tertarik dan bisa bertemu dengan Ibu Kartika. Waktu itu Pak Kris sedang berada di Yogyakarta. Beliau bertemu dengan seorang teman lamanya yang sudah 30 tahun beliau kenal, yang mengenalkan beliau kepada Ibu Kartika. Kemudian Pak Kris dan temannya diundang untuk makan. Supper is like late dinner. Ini makan malam yang sudah late, dan
Makan
Pak Kris
malam.
kemudian pergi ke rumah Ibu Kartika yang berada di luar Yogyakarta, dan beliau juga diterima di pendopo, dan sangat menarik sebenarnya obrolan-obrolan beliau dengan Ibu Kartika. Setelah intens diskusi dan mengenal lebih banyak tentang Ibu Kartika, mungkin selama 5-6 tahun Pak Kris mengenal Ibu Kartika, beliau kemudian mencoba berkomunikasi dengan Ibu Kartika lagi bahwa beliau tertarik untuk mendokumentasikan atau membuat film tentang Ibu Kartika yang dia percaya bahwa Ibu Kartika itu sangat berdedikasi dalam bidang tidak hanya seni, tapi juga kampanye atau promosi dan mengenalkan seni itu tidak hanya untuk orang-orang di Indonesia, tapi di luar negeri. Dan karya-karya beliau yang luar biasa itulah yang memang ingin Pak Kris convey disebarluaskan kepada orang-orang lain bahwa ada seorang Ibu Kartika di Indonesia yang sangat tertarik dengan hal tersebut. Jadi akhirnya lewat diskusi yang panjang, akhirnya Pak Kris berkesempatan untuk membuat film Ibu Kartika. Pak Kris, ini sangat menarik ya. I'm sorry, I speak in English. Pak Kris, it's quite interesting how actually you end up and you convince Ibu Kartika to to make a movie that I believe actually is inspiring actually for many people in Indonesia, and that's not many people actually where we are talking about the movie. Mostly it's all about the teenagers and so on, but you convinced Ibu Kartika to make the movie, and then she agreed to make that movie. Pak Kris, what actually make Ibu Kartika agree that you will be the director or the movie, Pak?
Well, I can't answer for exactly what Ibu Kartika felt or why, but from my best understanding, because I had met Ibu Kartika and we had a good friendship and a good relationship, I think she learned that she could feel very comfortable talking with me and that I was not a judgmental person. I was not going to think badly of her, that she could be open and say what was on her mind freely. Furthermore, I suppose part of the reason we got along well and she was willing to do the film is I also am an artist and have always liked to draw and paint, and Ibu Kartika was happy to see when I stayed at her place, I was making drawings in the garden and making pictures myself. And she was very kind and seemed to appreciate that I was able to draw and was able to discuss with her about art, not only about art in Indonesia, but European art and other forms of style. So I suppose if anyone is interested to make a documentary film or shoot some video or whatever, I would suggest it's important to have a nice relationship of some kind with the person you're going to make the film with. If you are a journalist and you're making a film that wants to expose someone or like that, that would be very different. But in my case, the type of films that I've been interested in making in Indonesia have been more character studies. They're about the personality and the unique features of the person who I'm making the film about. So to answer your question in just a few words, I think that the reason Ibu Kartika was comfortable with me making the film with her was that she could see that I liked her and I was sincerely interested in her and her life. And furthermore, I appreciate her artwork and respect her as a creative artist, in my opinion, an important figure in Indonesian culture.
Oke, terima kasih Pak Kris. Jadi saya bertanya kepada Pak Kris, bagaimana Ibu Kartika itu sampai tertarik atau bagaimana Pak Kris itu meyakinkan Ibu Kartika membuat filmnya. Dan itu juga tidak yang sehari dua hari, tapi memang sudah ada waktu di mana beliau berdua sudah menjadi teman yang baik, dan Ibu Kartika juga merasa nyaman dengan ide, dengan pikiran dan semuanya. Jadi perlu komunikasi yang intens tentang tersebut. Dan Pak Kris ini juga ternyata suka melukis karena beliau juga pernah tinggal di rumah Ibu Kartika, dan ketika beliau tinggal di sana, Pak Kris tuh melukis wajah beliau, wajah Pak Kris, dan ternyata Ibu Kartika juga sangat appreciate dengan lukisan dari Pak Kris. Dan mengapa lagi yang tertarik juga karena memang Pak Kris secara hatinya tuh tulus untuk membuat film, dan itu bisa dirasakan oleh Ibu Kartika. So itu alasannya mengapa sih sampai membuat film dokumenter tentang Ibu Kartika. Nah, film ini atau short clip nanti akan kita tayangkan di akhir presentasi ini. Kemudian saya ingin bertanya, so I want to continue to Pak Kris. So at the moment, Pak Kris, many actually Indonesian want to be like producers, especially in the digital technology at the moment. Do you have any like suggestions or tips how they can prepare if they really want to focus their work as a filmmaker, journalist, or like anything related to arts, Pak Kris?
That is a very broad, very big question, but I'll try my best to say something helpful if I can. For people who want to work in digital field or in this type of documentary filmmaking, I think that's great, and I think that's very important work. I would urge you, if you're thinking about doing this kind of work, to be sure that whatever equipment that you're going to use, it could be your HP, it could be the hand phone, it could be a small video camera, it could be more elaborate equipment, whatever you're going to use for recording and images and sound, be sure that you are familiar with your equipment and you're comfortable using it. Practice a lot at home or with friends, or take pictures around the house or whatever you like to do, and so that when you do go out to shoot footage for your planned documentary or film, when you start doing that, you will feel confident and you will feel that you know how to use your equipment well. I suppose that would be number one. And the second thing I might say about people interested in documentary film is always the most important part of a film is the story that you want to tell. So sometimes you can have a very clear idea at the very beginning of your project of what the story is, and that's great if you know clearly what your story is. Other times you might have a general idea of what your story is or what you want to focus on or discuss, but you will find that by shooting the footage and having the experience of making the film, the story will naturally emerge. And what I mean by that is, well, what we were talking about was ideas about making documentary film. And again, besides being very familiar with your equipment, with your cameras and sound recordings and so on. And by the way, it doesn't have to be fancy or very expensive equipment. You can make a great film with very simple devices. Besides being familiar with your equipment, even if it's just a HP or something relatively simple, I would urge you to realize that all films are based on stories of some kind. And the funny thing, or the thing that makes now it says to me that someone has entered the waiting room. Do I have to admit those people, or are you able to do that? I'll be happy to.
We'll do that, Pak Kris. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. The important thing is the story. When the funny or unusual or unique thing about documentary film is there's a lot of good fortune and good luck involved, because you're not if you're making a movie like a typical fictional film or Hollywood film or whatever you'd like to call it, a drama or romance or comedy, you have a script written out and everyone follows the script and they follow the story. And you meet in the morning, you say, all right, today we're going to shoot this scene and here is the pages of the script we're going to cover, and the actors know what they have to say, and you shoot the film. Documentary film, of course, does not work that way. You start in the day and maybe you're not sure what you're going to shoot. People are speaking and acting naturally. You haven't told them what to say. You're not sure what's going to come out. So what often happens with a documentary film is, as a filmmaker, you will have an idea of what kind of story you want to tell, but by making the film, by shooting the footage and making interviews and so on, you'll find that the actual story itself emerges naturally from what you shoot. And then, of course, according to your editing, you then after the fact, through editing, find out what are the important parts of the film for your story, and you use them accordingly. Yes.
Thank you very much, Pak Chris. Wow, luar biasa. This is a really nice tips, especially for young people who wants to be a filmmaker, especially in the documentary world. So, saya bertanya kepada Pak Chris, sebenarnya gimana sih tips untuk membuat film dokumenter dan apa yang perlu kita persiapkan? Ada 3 poin penting yang Pak Chris sebutkan. Yang pertama adalah be familiar with your, like things or equipment. Jadi coba Anda familiar dengan alat yang akan digunakan. Alat itu tidak perlu mahal. Anda bisa punya HP, bisa punya apapun untuk meng-shoot yang Anda inginkan. Jadi ini akan lebih mudah bagi para pembuat film dokumenter. Kemudian yang kedua, Pak Chris itu juga menyebutkan bahwa story atau cerita itu sangat penting dalam film dokumenter. Nah, ketika story itu biasanya emerge atau bergabung secara natural itu dengan nanti ketika Anda syuting. Jadi ini sedikit berbeda dengan ketika Anda misalnya berkecimpung dalam film yang bukan dokumenter. Kalau film yang bukan dokumenter biasanya setiap hari itu schedule-nya udah jelas. Anda sudah harus membaca skrip hari ini apa, kemudian jam ini apa, dan kemudian apa, dan kemudian apa. Nah, kalau ketika Anda terjun dalam bidang film, khususnya dokumenter, ini tuh Anda tidak bisa dikontrol seperti itu. Ketika Anda shoot atau Anda mengambil gambar, kemudian ada hal-hal yang Anda rasakan itu bisa menambah kebaikan untuk film yang Anda produce, itu biasanya akan langsung embedded, akan langsung bisa berubah, dan itu feeling-nya sangat berbeda ketika Anda membuat film biasa. Nah, itu adalah tips dari Pak Chris untuk para teman-teman, khususnya ini yang masih milenial ketika tertarik untuk menekuni dunia dokumenter. Jadi tidak perlu kamera yang mahal, dengan handphone itu bisa dilakukan, tapi harus ada soul-nya ya, sedikit berbeda dengan film-film yang biasanya itu diproduksi. Pak Chris, I think we have a lot of questions in the chat box, and I just want to read and also invite some participants here who have already joined our webinar. I'll give you the first question. Mas Nanang Dianto, it is actually one of the teams at the Koteka, and he lives in Ponorogo. Pak Chris, have you been to Ponorogo?
Mungkin Mas Nanang. Mas Nanang mana? Mas Nanang, halo Mas Nanang. Ini yang ada Mas Dirman ini.
Iya, Mas Nanang nggak ada ya? Saya bacakan aja berarti ya, Mas.
Ya, ada saya yang dari Ponorogo. Ya.
Oh, ini ada Mas Nanang. Monggo Mas Nanang, silakan.
Langsung Mas Dirman aja dulu. Langsung Mas Dirman. Biar Mas Dirman. Ini yang punya punya budayawan Ponorogo. Ini sudah bisa masuk.
Ya, ya.
Iya, monggo silakan. Ya, silakan. Ya.
Mas Dirman masuk.
Oke, terima kasih. Selamat sore semuanya. Ya, perkenalkan saya Sudirman. Saya praktisi seniman di daerah Ponorogo. Seperti kita ketahui bahwa daerah kami adalah sebuah daerah yang kecil, namun memiliki potensi budaya khususnya seni tradisional yang sangat besar, yaitu Riau Ponorogo. Ya, kita semuanya tahu bahwa kesenian tradisional ini adalah hal yang menarik bagi saya karena kebanyakan kesenian tradisional Riau Ponorogo ini semakin lama itu semakin hilang, bahkan semakin lama semakin tidak dikenal masyarakat. Tapi tidak demikian halnya dengan Riau Ponorogo yang kita miliki di Indonesia ini, bahwa kesenian tradisional ini semakin lama semakin berkembang, semakin lama semakin baik, semakin lama semakin banyak dikenal orang, ya, baik berkembangnya dari segi kualitas maupun kuantitasnya. Dari segi jumlah ya, Reok Ponorogo ini hampir seluruh Nusantara di Indonesia memiliki grup-grup reok yang berkembang di daerah masing-masing. Mulai dari Aceh sampai di Irian Jaya. Ini kita mengenal setiap daerah memiliki itu. Dan itu juga terbukti ketika ada festival Reok Ponorogo secara nasional di Ponorogo, itu diikuti oleh bahwa Reok Ponorogo ini ada festival di Ponorogo ini sampai kuotanya itu dibatasi karena jumlah pesertanya luar biasa. Ini contohnya. Jadi ini jumlahnya seperti dari kualitas sendiri. Dulu Reok Ponorogo itu sebagai kesenian picisan yang sangat tradisional banget, tetapi sekarang sudah tidak demikian. Ketika adik-adik kita, anak-anak kita dari akademisi, dari anak-anak mahasiswa dan dosen itu mengenal dan menata serta mengkoreografi tata gerak, tata iringan dan performance selanjutnya tentang Reok Ponorogo menjadi bagus. Nah, ini
pertanyaannya Mas Sudirman, boleh apa pertanyaannya Mas? Ya, Mas, pertanyaannya silakan.
Bagaimana ini reok ini bisa di Ponorogo sendiri ya, ini bisa lebih menjadi suatu nasional, milik nasional gitu ya, milik nasional bukan milik Ponorogo saja. Jadi ini sudah reok Indonesia begitu. Itu mohon dari teman-teman mungkin ini akan lebih cepat membawa nama Indonesia dalam artian dikenal di dunia itu dari reok itu, oh reok itu Indonesia begitu. Bagaimana itu bisa bersama-sama kita untuk membawa reok itu tidak Ponorogo tapi Indonesia.
Yang Indonesia tapi juga mungkin keluar
ya. Terima kasih.
There is a question from Pak Sudirman actually. Actually, this related with the like the movie you are making to convince Ibu Kartika and so on. But I just want to highlight that Sudirman actually he loves art and now he lives in Ponorogo, a small city in East Java. And then the very famous, there are many things in Ponorogo, but the most famous one is reok. And behind of actually his son, it is a reok. And reok is well recognized actually not only in Ponorogo but all over Indonesia. But Pak Sudirman wants to actually to make sure that reok is recognized not only in Ponorogo but want to be recognized in the whole Indonesia, probably also in other countries. His question is, Pak Chris, actually how actually to bring the traditional art into the national art and actually how to promote it in the worldwide audience, like actually what you did, Pak Chris.
Well, that's a very important question. I don't know very much about reog, but I am familiar with it. I think that for that type of art form, it's a great idea to use documentary footage, which you can share via YouTube, maybe in the beginning, as a way of promoting the art form throughout the region and throughout the country, as well as internationally. I think that making recordings and making them available online and perhaps through radio in Indonesia and television is a very good approach. Of course, on a local level, education is always important. And what that means, I suppose, in this context, is making a new generation familiar with the art form and encouraging them to be involved and be creative and learn to do it themselves. All cultural expression and art have their natural lifespan and they reflect a society and a culture. We cannot force an art form to continue or to be more well-known or more popular, but we can encourage it and we can take the sorts of efforts I've mentioned through documentary video, photography, sound recording, and education, and writing articles and doing journalistic work and scholarly work. We can take all of these measures to help encourage and promote the art form or cultural expression that we love. And I wish you every bit of good luck there in East Java.
Thank you, Pak Chris. Jadi Mas Dirman, untuk membuat kesenian lokal itu menjadi kesenian nasional, memang kita tidak langsung bisa memaksa orang, Mas. Jadi memang kita harus, yang bisa kita lakukan ada persuasif, mendorong orang lain itu untuk menyukai seni. Nah, yang saat ini yang bisa dilakukan, sudah ada banyak sekali media yang bisa digunakan digunakan. Misalnya tadi Pak Kris menyebutkan YouTube, tapi juga perlu digarisbawahi bahwa ketika kita membuat suatu karya seni, itu juga sangat penting, Mas. Kita seperti tadi Pak Kris bicarakan bahwa story. Jadi membuat dokumenter tuh yang bagus, yang bisa diterima, dan itu memang harus ya orang-orang yang profesional dalam bekerja dalam bidang tersebut. Jadi nanti ketika itu sudah dibuat, udah dipublikasikan, dan udah dikenalkan kepada masyarakat, tentunya itu akan membuat ya hopefully harapannya adalah kebanggaan. Jadi kita bisa mulai dari lingkungan kita, Mas, kemudian baru ke hubungan internasional. Dan Pak Kris juga mengatakan bahwa ini pertanyaan yang bagus ya, karena bagaimana sebenarnya kita tuh appreciate, kita tuh menghargai nilai-nilai atau kearifan lokal yang ada di Indonesia. Walaupun Pak Kris tidak tahu banyak tentang reog, tapi sering mendengar tentang reog, dan beliau mengucapkan selamat, Mas, harus tetap kerja keras dan harus tidak putus asa untuk mengenalkan reog itu ke tidak hanya Indonesia tapi juga ke mancanegara. Terima kasih Mas Sudirman. Semoga ini menjawab pertanyaan Mas. Nah, ini ada juga banyak teman-teman dari UIN ya, yang UIN Kudus yang sudah hadir di acara sore hari ini. Saya ingin mengundang mungkin dari teman-teman UIN, silahkan yang ingin bertanya langsung dengan Profesor Kris, karena sepertinya teman-teman ada deadline juga untuk membuat artikel. Silahkan teman-teman dari UIN, siapa yang mau bertanya, dan langsung saja. Silakan dibuka aja mikrofonnya, dan silakan Mas Saifuddin kalau ingin bertanya. Pakai bahasa Indonesia nggak apa-apa, nanti saya terjemahkan, Mas. Ya, halo Mas. Kalau enggak, ini ada Tan Joyjin. Tan Joyjin itu Mas. Tan
Oh,
Joyjin.
Kak Tanjin dulu nggak apa-apa.
Ya, silakan. Tan Joyjin, silakan. Halo. Atau Mas Saifuddin. Baik, kalau nggak ada pertanyaan, kita akan ke
Oh
pertanyaan.
ya, benar Kak, saya dulu Kak gitu.
Ya, monggo ya.
Any question for me? Dalam pembuatan film maker di sini Pak Riz tidak terlepas dong dari objeknya, yaitu Bu Kartika. Yang kita soroti dalam pembuatan film maker itu, apakah yang ditonjolkan itu apa? Apakah kemampuan kita atau apa yang lain yang semestinya di penonton dan sorotan film, sudut pandang film itu spesial, apa yang harus kita soroti? Seperti itu.
Baik, Mas Syarifuddin. Terima kasih. Pak Kris, there is a question from a student from UIN Kudus. UIN Kudus is located in Central Java, and he pointed out that when you make a documentary film, especially related to Indonesia, Pak Kris, there are a lot of elements, Pak Kris, like that you want to cover and you want to highlight. Actually, what is the most important as a filmmaker highlighting their artwork, Pak Kris?
For my approach, I was most interested in highlighting the perspective of the subject of the film, which was Ibu Kartika. Sometimes when we see films about a subject, we hear the narrator talking a lot, or we hear an expert providing their opinion and perspective, and that's fine. But what I tried to do my films, and what particularly in the film about Ibu Kartika, I tried to do was allow her to speak in her own words to explain her perspective and her way of seeing. That's why the film is called 9 Ways of Seeing, because it's divided into her various perspectives on 9 different subjects as a way of guiding us through, and her life story. So I suppose that would be, for me, the most important thing is allowing the subject of the film to speak for themselves. And to me, I think sometimes when I see films made by outsiders to a particular culture, for example, an American or Australian person making a media or film about Indonesia, sometimes I think the filmmaker can make the mistake of doing all the talking for the Indonesian people and perhaps not letting the Indonesian people express themselves and their particular point of view, which after all is the most interesting part if you're trying to learn something about an Indonesian subject. So again, my answer would be I tried to keep the film focused on the perspective and the words and the viewpoint of Ibu Kartika rather than my own interpretation.
Baik, terima kasih Pak Kris. Well, very insightful. Jadi Mas Saifuddin, ketika kita membuat film, khususnya film tentang Ibu Kartika, Pak Kris itu meng-highlight hal-hal yang penting. Salah satu hal yang penting sebenarnya yang beliau highlight adalah bagaimana beliau itu belajar dari subjeknya sendiri. Mengapa judulnya itu Nine Ways of Seeing? Karena beliau itu percaya bahwa yang saat ini beliau lihat, baik itu dari, tadi beliau menyebutkan dari ada banyak narator yang sudah menceritakan tentang beliau, ada juga dari expert, para ahli yang juga menceritakan Ibu Kartika, tapi yang paling penting adalah sebenarnya bagaimana Pak Kris ini tidak hanya berpikir tentang dirinya sendiri, tapi bagaimana Ibu Kartika itu bisa mengekspresikan dengan apa yang beliau punya, misalnya kata-kata dan sebagainya. Itu yang beliau tekankan. Jadi dari segi subjeknya, dan subjeknya itu adalah ya Ibu Kartika. Itu yang beliau pikir itu paling penting ketika kita mau membuat film dokumenter. Baik, terima kasih. Kemudian ini juga pertanyaan dari Pak David. Pak David silahkan. Mas David, Pak David, monggo. Udah tunjuk jari nih, David. Oh, kalau tidak ada, baik. Saya ingin menyapa Dr. Aro yang tadi belum ada di Zoom. Dr. Aro, selamat sore. Oke, baik. Pak Tanjo sekarang, silahkan.
Halo.
Halo, ya. Monggo Mas, ya silahkan.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Why do you choose Indonesia? And what is your dislike and like about Indonesia? And what is your next target?
Terima kasih,
Halo.
Pak Tanjudin. Ini dari mana ya?
Why do you choose Indonesia? And what is your next target?
Oke, terima kasih Pak
And what
Tanjudin. Kalau boleh tahu dari
is
mana,
your
Pak?
like and dislike about Indonesia?
Ya, baik Pak
Semarang.
Tanjudin. Ya, terima kasih Pak Tanjudin. Pak Tanjudin dari
Semarang.
Semarang, ya, baik. Baik, Pak Tanjudin is from Semarang, Pak Kris.
Semarang.
I think it's clear what he asked to you. Please, Pak Kris.
What was the first question? I'm sorry, I'm trying to remember exactly. What do I like about Indonesia? I like many things about Indonesia. I like the culture and the artwork and the people. I like gudang garam merah kretek. I like soto ayam. I love gunung api. I love to go in the forest and in the natural places. I love to meet all the interesting people. You know, I've been very lucky to visit not everywhere in Indonesia, but a few places along the way from Sumatra, Java, and Bali, but also Lombok, Sumbawa, Flores, Sumba, Rote, Timor, other places in Indonesia. And that's been really exciting to me. In terms of my future plans regarding working in Indonesia, I was hoping in 2020 to start 2 more projects. One was a project working with an organic farm in West Java, actually. A man who I happen to know named Jonathan Green, who in West Java has started an all-natural organic farm and learning center for local kids to learn about organic natural farming and recycling and environmental protection. And I thought that would be a very nice subject for a documentary, and I was planning to go in 2020, which was already a year ago now. But of course, we've had travel restrictions because of the virus. So I don't think it's very easy to travel to Indonesia right now for people coming from Australia. So that project has had to be put on hold. So I hope that starts to answer your question.
Yes, thank you very much Pak Kris. Jadi Pak Kris ini daripada nggak sukanya, lebih banyak sukanya tentang Indonesia, dan beliau itu tadi sempat di awal menyebutkan bahwa Indonesia itu adalah rumah kedua beliau. Dan kalau berbicara tentang Indonesia, tidak hanya musik, tidak hanya seni, tapi beliau juga senang orang-orangnya, kemudian juga beliau tuh senang tentang alam Indonesia, gunung berapi, tadi Pak Kris juga sempat menyebutkan, dan Pak Kris itu sudah traveling ke banyak tempat, dan beliau sempat menyebutkan ke Sumba dan daerah-daerah lain. Kemudian sebenarnya what's next-nya, sebelum pandemik Pak Kris itu sudah punya rencana tahun lalu, beliau itu ingin membuat satu film dokumenter itu tentang organik dan learning farm, itu yang berada di Jawa Barat. Tapi karena saat ini ada perbatasan untuk kunjungan dan traveling, ini agak susah bagi beliau. Jadi beliau ingin juga masih masih punya semangat untuk mengerjakan proyek tersebut di kemudian hari. Pak Chris, actually, when was your last time visiting Indonesia, Pak Chris?
The last time I visited Indonesia actually was, now I realize this is 2021. So the last time I was there was 3 years ago.
Okay.
Earlier, I think I said the last time I was there was 2 years ago, but I forgot this is already 2021. So I was last in Indonesia in 2018.
Ya.
2000.
Jadi Pak Chris terakhir berkunjung ke Indonesia itu tahun 2018, sudah 3 tahun yang lalu Pak Chris berkunjung ke Indonesia. Dan ada lagi pertanyaan yang ingin langsung bertanya, ini saya ingin langsung membacakan pertanyaan dari Mbak Mira Habibah. Mbak Mira, do you want to ask directly to Pak Chris? Okay, so I just want to read her comment. Pak Chris, I hope that one day you can visit Purwakarta. Purwakarta is small city actually nearby Jakarta in the West Java, because during the pandemic, the students in the school are forced to learn about the, like a plantation or gardening, either at home or in the school. So
very nice.
We invite you to come to her hometown.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I thank you for reading the comment or question from the participants, because I'll just mention at my end, these comments appear on the screen, very small at the bottom of the screen, and only for a moment, and then it's gone, and I don't know where it's gone. So I'm sorry if I'm not answering your comments and questions, because I really don't have a chance to read them, and they go by very quickly, and sometimes they go by while you're speaking, sir, or I'm speaking, and it's difficult. So if you feel that you want to review some of those comments or questions, that would be great.
Okay, thank you very much, Pak Chris. I'll read the comments and also the questions from the participants. I think today a lot of participants want to know as well actually about Australia, Pak Chris. We have, you talk about the movie, but Australia is our neighbor, Pak Chris, and many Indonesian living in Australia. Pak Chris, you mentioned earlier during the introduction that actually now also the pandemic in Australia is still going on, and then not many people travel because of this pandemic.
Yes, just to be clear, I'm sorry if I was unclear earlier.
Yes.
In Melbourne, where I live, we do not really have lockdown anymore.
Okay.
It's okay. We are allowed to travel in Australia, no problem. But
in Australia, Pak,
we can travel in Australia. We can travel and go to work and school and so on. It seems like right now there are no new cases, and it seems the situation is much better. Lebih aman,
yeah.
But we are still not allowed for overseas travel. So if we want to go to another country, you have to have special permission and special reasons and so on. Similarly, if people from overseas, if people from Indonesia all I wanted to say was, just to be clear, if foreign people, on the other hand, or people from overseas want to come to Australia, I think they still have a policy of isolation when you arrive. I could be wrong. You should check with the website, Australian government, and official sources. But to my limited knowledge, what I believe they are continuing to do is having a 2-week isolation period. So if you plan to come to Australia, it's very possible they're going to ask you when you arrive, even if you have a test and everything seems to be okay, they still ask the people for 2 weeks to stay in a hotel in isolation. And they tell you what hotel, and you don't have any freedom for a couple of weeks. So if you're thinking about traveling to Australia, the best thing you can do is go to the government travel advisory website and find out for yourself exactly what the details are. But to the best of my knowledge, that is the current situation. So I hope that's helpful and answers your question.
Terima kasih Pak Chris. So Pak Chris ini tinggal di Melbourne, dan beliau juga menyebutkan bahwa saat ini di Melbourne sudah tidak ada lockdown. Jadi di Australia, kalau Anda pergi ke Australia, Melbourne itu ada agak di tengah ya sebenarnya posisinya, dan sudah tidak ada banyak kasus baru di Melbourne, jadi sudah terbuka. Dan pada dasarnya orang Australia yang tinggal di Australia saat ini, mereka boleh traveling di dalam negara Australia. ya. Kita mengenal ada mungkin Canberra, ada Sydney dan sebagainya. Mereka boleh bertraveling, tentunya dengan protokol kesehatan. Tetapi jika warga Australia ingin berkunjung ke negara lain, itu lain cerita. Saat ini memang belum boleh diizinkan. Tentunya ada beberapa kriteria apa saja, siapa saja yang boleh pergi. Tapi untuk warga pribadi sendiri itu belum boleh. Nah, ini juga berlaku untuk warga internasional, misalnya orang Indonesia kita yang mau ke Australia. Itu juga ada banyak peraturan, tetapi beliau menyarankan untuk mengecek peraturan-peraturan tersebut melalui website. Karena biasanya walaupun Anda sudah PCR, udah swab ketika Anda di Australia, Anda harus karantina selama 14 hari di hotel atau tempat yang sudah direkomendasikan atau ditunjuk oleh pemerintah Australia. Jadi saat ini teman-teman yang ingin traveling ke Australia, cek and recheck ya, apa saja yang boleh dan apa saja yang tidak boleh. Nah, tapi ini juga sebenarnya kita traveling karena di Zoom ini kita juga connecting the dot dari Jerman, dari Australia, dan dari banyak negara. Jadi acara seperti ini menurut saya sih bagus untuk connecting the dot, dan kami sekali-sekali jika ada banyak pertanyaan atau orang-orang yang terlibat atau ikut tidak hanya dari Indonesia tapi dari seluruh dunia. Nah, acara ini tuh diselenggarakan setiap hari Sabtu ya teman-teman. Bagi yang mungkin baru, saya ingin menyebutkan bahwa ini tiap hari Sabtu setiap jam 4 sampai jam 5 atau 5.30 dengan narasumber tidak hanya berasal dari Indonesia tapi juga berasal dari luar negeri. Bagus juga untuk belajar bahasa Inggris loh ini, karena langsung bertemu dengan native speakers, dan ilmu dengan beliau itu sangat harganya. Kalau dulu kita harus pergi ke Melbourne, sekarang kan nggak lewat Zoom, kita bisa belajar dalamin langsung dari pakarnya, dan kebetulan Pak Chris ahli dalam bidang documentary dan sangat terkenal dan sangat well respected di Australia. Mungkin saya ingin menanyakan lagi dari beberapa teman yang ingin bertanya. Silahkan bagi yang ingin bertanya. Oh, Mbak Muslifa Asyani. Mbak Muslifa adalah Ketua Koteka. Mbak Muslifa, please go ahead.
Okay, hello everyone. Good afternoon from Lombok. Thank you for the chance, Mas Oni.
Yeah.
Okay, hello Chris. Good afternoon from
Hi.
Lombok.
Hi, how are you?
Fine, Alhamdulillah. I just would like to ask about one question. Although you still have limited access, that you still cannot go overseas, do you already have one figure, maybe not as famous or as skillful as Ibu Kartika, but somebody in Indonesia maybe, or to be exact like in Java maybe, that you want to be your next documentary character or person? Maybe that's all, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would just like to say I'm very happy to hear from you in Lombok. I have very many happy memories from time in Lombok, and I was very lucky to be able to meet a lot of great musicians when I was there. And I produced a CD of recordings of some of the traditional musicians I make there. So it's been a long time since I've had a chance to visit Lombok, but I hope I can visit you again sometime soon. To address your question, I was planning before the virus isolation and the pandemic started, I was planning to go to West Java to make a documentary about a farm in West Java, which has been set up with all natural methods, not using pesticides, not using artificial fertilizers, and using recycling, and designed to be an environmentally sustainable and friendly place, and which is also set up to be an educational center so that the students from local schools can come there on field trips and for education and to learn about ways of living in harmony with the earth in Indonesia in ways that are sustainable and do not cause harm, which can reduce pollution. So my next plan for a documentary was about this issue of sustainable living in Indonesia, living in harmony with nature according to using traditional methods as well as more modern innovation, and focusing at least initially on this particular farm, which is located in West Java. But unfortunately, that plan was for last year for 2020, and I find that now it has been 1 year since in Australia we are not allowed to travel overseas. So I've had to wait and put my plans for future work in Indonesia on hold for the moment, but I hope in the future I will be able to return. Thank you.
Thank you very much Pak Kris dan juga Mbak Nani ya yang sudah bertanya tentang bagaimana walaupun kita tidak bisa travel tapi tetap menjaga persaudaraan seperti ini. Dan Pak Kris ini menurut saya tadi beliau sudah menunjukkan walaupun sekali lagi beliau ingin sekali berkunjung ke Indonesia tahun 2020 tapi karena pandemik dan belum bisa berpergian, beliau itu senang sekali jika bisa tetap berkomunikasi, bekerja bersama dengan Indonesia. Dan Pak Kris itu punya kenangan atau happy time, waktu yang sangat bahagia ketika beliau di Lombok. Tadi Mbak Nani kebetulan dari Lombok. Dan beliau bertemu dengan banyak musisi di sana dan juga berinteraksi dengan warga lokal, dan itu pengalaman yang luar biasa bagi Pak Kris. Dan beliau juga ingin bahwa pandemik ini segera berakhir dan beliau bisa berpergian langsung ke Indonesia. Nah ini waktunya ini sebenarnya masih pertanyaannya masih banyak nih, tapi kita terbatas dengan waktu. Kebetulan yang di bagian timur sudah maghrib ya sekarang ya, waktu Indonesia atau Tengah atau waktu Indonesia Timur. Sekali lagi, ini kegiatan Koteka, ini tuh banyak kalau teman-teman ingin bergabung, sekali lagi ini banyak manfaatnya, tidak hanya promoting tentang Indonesia, dan ini adalah benar-benar building a good relationship antara Indonesia dan teman-teman Indonesia di luar negeri, dan juga narasumber yang sekali lagi tidak hanya berasal dari Indonesia, tapi juga dari negara lain seperti Pak Kris. Sebelum acara ditutup, saya ingin, apakah Dr. Aro sudah ada? Halo Dr. Aro? Karena beliau, kalau tidak ada, saya ingin mengucapkan ya terima kasih kepada salah satu sponsor kita pada sore hari ini, Dinda Baby Shop Plus Semarang, yang sudah banyak membantu kami, dan nanti kami juga akan membagikan hadiah ya kepada para penanya. Jadi stay tune aja di sosial media kita @Kotekatalk-28 nanti akan dihubungi. Kemudian saya juga ingin mengucapkan terima kasih kepada Dr. Ahmad Sumaro, MSI Med, yang sudah juga memberikan sponsor hadiah untuk kegiatan Koteka pada sore hari ini. Sebelum ditutup, saya ingin memperlihatkan share tentang cuplikan. Tadi ada yang bertanya, how can I get actually the movies, Pak Kris? And then actually the movies is available on the YouTube. But also bagi teman-teman yang bisa, ini karena dunia digital saat ini, so those who are interested in buying the movie, I'll give you the share. Saya akan share link film Pak Kris itu, tersedia juga di halfrelay.com.kartika, but I just want to share on the link here. Jadi teman-teman yang ingin membeli atau mendownload film Pak Kris dengan Bu Kartika bisa langsung ke, saya tulis ya di sini http baik, itu teman-teman bisa mendapatkan jika tertarik bisa langsung mendownload dan membeli di link yang akan ditulis oleh Mbak Gana. Saya ingin share movie yang Pak Kris buat ya, sebentar. Wow.
Great.
Luar biasa, Pak Chris. Thank you very much, Pak Chris. I know
Thank
that
you.
we're very busy at the moment and you spend, like 1.5 hours with us. I think the audience here, they learn a lot from you. Not only actually how they should love, not just should, but they must love Indonesia, not only the like the way like people are working, but also the culture. This is so beautiful, and then you capture it and you make it a very beautiful movie about Indonesia, especially in Ibu Kartika Affandi's movie. Pak Chris, on the last, do you want to say something to the audience here? These people are mostly actually they're travelers and also they are students from some university, Pak Chris. Probably you can give like some words to all of them.
Sure. I don't know what to say except to say thank you so much for your interest and your enthusiasm. I appreciate it a great deal. Maaf kalau saya pakai bahasa Inggris saja, tapi saya sangat malas dan sekarang sudah malam minggu. Maaf itu tidak begitu resmi ya. Jadi saya pakai bahasa Inggris ya. Mohon maaf. I would encourage you to study hard and do your very best. And if you are interested to see any of my films or recordings, sound recordings of music I've made in Indonesia, please just use Google. You can see, I think, on the screen how to spell my name. And if you put my name, Christoper Basil, together with Indonesia or with Java or Ibu Kartika or any number of things, I have videos on YouTube as well as Vimeo, and I have websites also about the recordings I've made in Indonesia as well as the Kartika Affandi project. So please feel free to Google those and find them. And if you have any more detailed questions or want to make contact on those sites, there are buttons you can press to make contact or send me an email. I'm also on Facebook, so you can find me there. So thank you so much for your attention and your enthusiasm, and I hope this has been enjoyable for you, and I wish you all the best. Thank you. Terima kasih,
Pak Chris. Jadi kata terakhir dari Pak Chris tadi, mohon maaf Pak Chris tidak berbicara dalam bahasa Indonesia, walaupun saya yakin bahasa Indonesia Pak Chris pasti lancar ya. Karena
masih kurang.
Jadi beliau agak sedikit mungkin malas, tapi tidak itu. Tapi pesan beliau yang harus benar-benar kita serap adalah bahwa ya kita harus mencintai nilai budaya atau seni ataupun apapun tentang kebudayaan Indonesia yang memang itu tidak hanya menurut Pak Chris ya, tapi hampir semua orang yang mungkin tinggal di luar negeri begitu, mereka akan benar-benar really appreciate, benar-benar menghargai budaya Indonesia. Ketika Anda berada di luar negeri, mungkin Bagana itu kemarin banyak nanya tuh Bagana termotivasi banget sih Mas Oni ngadain webinar ini dari mana dengan teman-teman. Itu adalah sebagai nilai yang memang Bagana cinta Indonesia, dan salah satunya ketika kita belajar apa saja seperti belajar dari Pak Chris sore hari ini harus kita ambil manfaatnya untuk kita sendiri dan untuk orang lain. Dan bagi teman-teman yang ingin tahu banyak karya Pak Chris, tadi sudah menyebutkan, silakan Google beliau, kemudian nama beliau sudah ada di situ, silahkan Anda catat, kemudian Indonesia, dan di beliau juga punya Facebook dan terbuka menjadi teman Pak Chris, dan Anda bisa berkomunikasi langsung dengan Pak Chris. Jadi sekali lagi Pak Chris, atas nama Koteka, Komunitas Traveler Kompasiana, kami mengucapkan terima kasih. Di sini ada tim kami yang hadir, ada Mbak Gana dari Jerman, Mbak Nani dari Lombok, kemudian Mas Danang itu dari Ponorogo, kemudian Mas Dev dari Salatiga. Jadi ini kami pun juga bekerja di banyak tempat, saya sendiri dari Bogor. Jadi once again, jangan lupa setiap hari Sabtu jam 4 sampai jam 5 kita akan mengadakan webinar dengan tema pariwisata yang Wonderful Indonesia, dan juga hal-hal lain yang tentunya akan banyak menambah wawasan bagi kita semua. Sebelum acara berakhir, mari kita berfoto bersama. Siap-siap, kita silakan Anda turn on your camera, so kita bisa foto bersama ya. Ya, monggo silakan teman-teman hidupkan atau nyalakan kamera Anda dan kita bisa foto bersama. Sekali lagi terima kasih, stay safe, stay healthy. Mari kita tetap ikuti semua protokol kesehatan. Selamat sore semuanya.
Selamat sore, Kak.
Terima kasih. Selamat sore. Terima kasih banyak.
Yes, Prof. Chris, thanks.
Thank you.